Hi guys, welcome back to Keep Smiling Adventures, and today we are just on a very simple little overnight bikepacking mission, I guess you could call it. And also I asked you guys to send me in some questions to do a little Q&A today, so I'm going to also be answering them questions. Today's goal, all we're going to do is ride along the coast to Hurst Lighthouse, have a little cruise up there, then head into the New Forest for a little overnight wild hammock in the hammock. So let's get into it. The first question comes from Dow J. Have you had any scary experiences while wild camping? Now, I will first say I had a really bad experience while camping because I got everything robbed. I'll link a video up to the story there because it's a bit long to share here. But in terms of scary things that have happened to me, yes, quite recently actually, when I was doing the 370 miles of Smiles bikepacking route, I was in my hammock, I was sleeping, and for something, either a fox or a deer or something, literally ran into my hammock, straight into the side of me. I was asleep, it made me jump like crazy. I was like, what the hell is that? And yeah, still to this day, don't really know what it was, but something ran into the side of me, either a fox or a deer, I think. I've also been woken up by wild dogs while I was in France and like Portugal, casually sleeping, and then just hearing wild dogs bark at me, and I was just in a sleeping bag, not even a bivvy or anything, and then they were just like, yeah, I was like packing up my stuff and I'm out of there. See you later. What's the first question? Let's carry on. It's pretty cold. I wish I brought some gloves. Okay, the next question comes from Boo Boo, and it is, what is the farthest you have ever travelled in one day? Now, I'm going to assume you mean by my own means by a bicycle and not like a plane or something. So the furthest I have ever travelled in within a 24-hour period is 368 miles. Again, there'll be a link in the description or up on one of these corners because I did actually record that ride. It was over a year ago. It was just after lockdown, like when everything started opening up. I decided that I would try and just cycle as far as I could in like one day essentially. And because normally when I'm doing long distance rides, I'm normally having to stop to find shops and like locate things and do the map and stuff. But because I was going around places that I knew, I could put the shop where I wanted it to be. I could just really have a structure to the ride and just ride as much as possible. I'll put the Strava thing up as well. It was 368 miles, although Strava took 0.1 mile off me, as it always does, and the elapsed time was actually 22.5 hours with a riding time of 21.5 hours. So yeah, 368 miles is the furthest I have officially cycled in one day. Michael Shaw, and this question is, what got you into cycling? Well, I think like most people, it was just to get to places. I probably started cycling pretty young. I kind of have this memory being in nursery and just riding around this little figure of 8 road. So I was cycling to school and back about 2.5 miles most days. I had a paper round, I did that on a bike. Oxford Mail used to loan me 30 quid for that, by the way. I think when it really took off was when I got my first proper job, and I was living about 20 miles away from this job. I didn't really have any money to pay for public transport. So I was like, I'm gonna cycle to and from this job, at least for the first month, until I've got enough money, like my first paycheck, before I can and I was going to buy like a moped or something. But it turned out that I actually just enjoyed riding the bike. I was doing about 40 miles each day anyway on this really old rally bicycle. I sprayed the tyres pink and everything. It was ghastly. So from then I saved up, bought my first road bike, and then at the time I was working at quite a nice job, 3 days on, 4 days off. So when after my 3 days, I would finish in Oxford and I would just go cycling for like 2 or 3 days, and I would start racking up 200, 300 mile days. So that's really sort of where it got a bit serious around 18, just really cycling to and from work. Thanks for the question, Michael. Next question comes from Patient Swim. Any things to look out for when buying a seat pack? I'm worried about going too big, 10+ litres, and worried about tyre clearance. What should go in the saddleback? And have you tried a harness design saddle pack? So things to look out for when buying a saddle pack is just mainly being waterproof and just kind of strong. Being waterproof and being strong is the main two things. Now for tyre clearance, for me, I've never had this issue. I could go quite big, but I ride very, very big bikes. Now if you are quite small and you ride a very small frame bike, you might have issues with tyre clearance. If that is the case, then it might be better for you to just go with kind of like a rear rack and then just put it on. It will just be a little bit easier. But for me, I honestly can't say I've ever had an issue with tyre clearance because I ride huge, huge bikes. As for size, typically I would say the most common size for a seat pack is around that. Like the Goldilocks zone for seat packs is around 10 litres, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a bit more, but around that you should be able to carry most things that you need to. And that brings me on to the next part of that question, is what goes in your seat pack. For me, I typically have my sleeping bag and some spare clothes. That's pretty much it. Socks, that sort of thing. The things that just always have to stay dry. Now if something gets wet, then I'll put it in like a plastic bag and then put it in, but I will try and separate my wet stuff and my dry stuff. So the sleeping bag is one thing you do not want to be getting wet. You do not want to have a cold or wet night's sleep, so make sure you keep that dry. And the final part to that question is, have I tried a harness system? And yes. So basically what you mean by that is you put the dry bag into the system, and I would highly, highly recommend going for that design over what I've got here, because this gets very muddy, it gets very wet, and it's just a pain to get things in and out without getting all wet. Also, one thing, especially if you live in a wet climate like I do, and as I keep my sleeping bag and everything in there, it's much easier to be in my tent with this dry bag and be able to put everything away before I even get out of the tent. With this, because it stays on the bike, I have to basically get out in the rain with my sleeping bag and try and get it in really quick, and it's just a bit of a hassle and a bit of a pain. Now this style where it's just always attached to your bike also makes it a little bit harder to stuff like everything in. So personally, I wouldn't go for this style unless weight is literally everything. Maybe if you live in a dry climate, then yeah, it's not too bad. But for me, because I'm always out in rain and storms and stuff, I would much prefer my old Blackburn one where I could fill up the dry bag while I was in my tent. I was all dry, I could just get out, put it in the bike, and I'm good to go. Thanks for the question, Patient Swim. Adrian asked a very, very important question. How many miles do you get to the Ginsters? Now, I don't know, but this is going to have to be a future video for sure. But if I was going to guesstimate, on road, definitely over 100 miles, probably 150, because I've actually done a century without eating or drinking before. Video up somewhere there and in the description below. But off-road, I would probably say around 40 to 50 miles, but we might go and test that. If you want to see that, comment down below, we'll make it happen. We'll do the Ginsters Fuel Scientific Challenge. Thanks for the question. There is the goal. There is the lighthouse. There's the Isle of Wight. Alright guys, we made it to the lighthouse today, so all I've got to do now is head to the New Forest and find somewhere to camp. But I've got another question from Andrew Pledger. What big rides are on your bucket list? Well, I have lots and lots of rides. Like, I'm constantly thinking of rides that I want to do, and I keep finding rides that I want to do, so it's a never ending cycle. But there are two rides that I would absolutely love to do. The first one would be to cycle from England to Taiwan, or Taiwan to England. Not really sure which way I'm going to go yet, because, well, my girlfriend lives there and I haven't seen her since like COVID, all the COVID stuff starts, so that would be a super cool trip to do. And the next one is a huge one, and I have this dream of being able to get a Guinness World Record. Now, the record I believe I could get right now is to cycle the entire coast of Britain as fast as possible. It currently stands at 22 days, doing about 220 miles a day. I've actually cycled the coast of Britain before, must be 5, 6, 7 years ago now, and I just took my time and I only did it in 42 days, I think it was. So yeah, I definitely believe I could do that. Now, to actually do that ride, like officially to get the actual Guinness World Record, that's another task in itself, because if I'm going to do it officially, I'm going to need some support. I've sent out a few emails here and there, but right now looking more and more likely that if I'm going to do it, it's just going to be unofficial, which kind of sucks because I want the official Guinness World Record. But we'll see. If you're a company and you're watching and you want to support, I'm trying to get a team together. I don't know if it's going to be completely self-supported or with a team. Obviously self-supported, I still think I could beat that, but it'll be a bit slower than what I could do with a supported team. So yeah, they are like the two main massive rides that I'd love to do. Cycle to Taiwan or Taiwan to England, and then obviously I would love to get that Guinness World Record. Thanks for the question. Right, before it gets dark, I'm going to try and find somewhere to camp, so let's jump over to camp. Well, good morning guys. That was the longest night because it was actually the longest night of the year, so winter is officially on us, and spending the night in a hammock was a pretty cold one. So another question was asked from Paul Robinson, and the question is, will we see any overseas adventures in 2022? Well, simple answer is I bloody well hope so. Right, I'm going to pack up. Sun is just rising, and then let's answer this final question. Guys, look how beautiful that sky is this morning. What a beautiful winter morning. Oh, it's a cold morning, guys. Right, final question before I head back and get a nice warm shower because I am freezing cold. This one is from Martin, and have you thought about doing any bikepacking events? He did the Great British Escapades this past September, 500k, North and South Downs. I'm sure you'd like it. Well, Martin, yes, sort of. I'm always sort of thinking about doing things. The thing is, I get really bad social anxiety, so like the whole riding my bike is absolutely fine. The whole turning up, doing all like the pre-race sort of stuff, the signing on, all that sort of stuff, and just kind of is really kind of a horrible experience for me. That's pretty much why I don't actually race as well. I've tried a few races, didn't really mind the racing part of it, just hated all like the pre-race stuff and having to like do all the signing on and stuff. So yeah, I thought about it lots, but to be honest, it's too draining for me to even just do the pre-signing on thing. It's just too much for me. So realistically, most likely wouldn't be doing any sort of official racing because of that. Right guys, I'm bloody freezing. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sending in these questions. This was the first little winter adventure, I guess. What a beautiful morning, although it's bloody bitterly cold and frosty. So guys, thank you for the questions. I'll see you in the next one. Keep smiling, enjoy the adventure.